What's going on, my homies? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am finally back with another team builder for you guys today. This week, it is round 1 of the GBA Season 9 playoffs, where we are taking on none other than AsterJ, the coach of the Montreal Habsols. Make sure to go check him out if you haven't already. A really high quality content creator, and he kicked our butts earlier in the season, so he's definitely a good player as well. Make sure to go give him a look. I love his videos, especially this season. A lot of really nice graphic work, I think, on his videos this season. So props to him for that. Make sure to go give those videos a look now. This matchup is huge. Obviously, it's the playoffs. Obviously, we really want to win this game, as this is going to be the last season of the GBA in this generation, and you know, I want to be able to go out on a title if I can. So the road to the championship does start now with this game against Aster. Win 3 more games this season, and we are the champions. So this is step 1, I guess, in that process. We are on a bit of a winning streak here to to close out the end of the season. Actually, have won our past 5 games, and of course, the last game that we dropped was way back in week 5 to none other than Aster. So we do need to get our revenge here in this game for sure. But just to very briefly go over the draft that Aster has, he is rocking the Mega Mawile, Lunala, Tornadus T, Rotom Wash, Nidoqueen, Tyranitar, Reuniclus, Cobalion, Salamence, Registeel, and the Stoutland. So this is pretty much the same team that he had in our first encounter, although he swapped out, I believe, the Registeel in exchange for, I think he used to have a Licky Licky, which actually is kind of nice for my team build, as Licky Licky forced me to bring certain coverages, or at least certain utility options on my team to make sure that I could deal with it. And Registeel not so much, as it's his 3rd Steel type on his draft, which is kind of interesting. I'm very curious on the thought process on that, but I'm sure there's specific matchups where Registeel would have been necessary compared to his more offensive steals, the Mega Mawile and the Cobalion. So you know, Aster's a smart guy. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. I just don't think that the Registeel is going to be relevant necessarily in this matchup, when I think both the Mawile and the Cobalion match up far better against my draft as a whole than something like Registeel would. So at least from my perspective, I'm pretty happy that he made that swap. But anyway, just to talk a little bit about the team here, as I didn't actually do a team builder when I encountered him earlier on in the season. I definitely treated that original matchup this season as more of a scouting opportunity to see how Aster wanted to try to prepare for a draft like mine this season. So I didn't really bring very many of my better options in terms of my team building in the first matchup, so I saved a lot of those for this specific game, because I really was thinking this was going to happen, and here we are in round 1 of the playoffs. But anyway, Aster's team is very threatening. It's pretty heavily centered around momentum and breaking power. His Ubers, the Lunala and the Mega Mawile, both can punch an enormous hole in pretty much any team, as just that combination is virtually unresistible for any draft. No draft is going to be able to switch in well to both Lunala and Mega Mawile, so I think those are really well selected Ubers on Aster's team here for sure. And obviously my draft is no exception. Those are very difficult to switch into. If you happen to watch our first matchup this season back in week 5, Lunala really put in the work against my team. I think he got 3 kills with Lunala, and granted, at the time I had Incineroar as my only Ghost Resist. Now I also have the Meloetta to help out on that, but especially at the time, yeah, I could not deal with Lunala defensively. It was not going well for me at all, especially with how well Aster played in that game. So we do need to kind of revisit how we're going to deal with the Lunala here in this matchup. Is clearly what I tried to do last time around did not work very well at all. So anyway, we'll talk more about that as we dive into the team here soon. But anyway, he does have those pretty big threats, those really big threats in the Lunala and the Mega Mawile. The Cobalion is also a massive threat to my team. He really proved that in our last matchup, as Cobalion picked up 3 kills to close out the game in that, I believe it was 3 kills, might have been 2, to close out the game in our first matchup. So he just brought a nice Z move, dual dance Cobalion, which just put in a ton of work against my team in the late game. I don't know if I ever mentioned his Z Captain. Z Tornadus T and Z Cobalion are his 2 Z captains on his team, both of which are pretty threatening, but the Torrentee doesn't match up quite as well against my draft, as I do have stuff like the Magearna, the Goodra, among other just generally bulky, annoying Pokemon that Torn kind of struggles to take down. If he brings Tornadus, it's probably going to be more in the defog role or more in just like an Assault Vest pivoting momentum type of role if he decides to bring it. But I don't really think he will. I think it's possible. It's definitely one of the mons he could bring. It's certainly more likely than stuff like Registeel and probably Stoutland, but even so, I don't really think it's going to end up coming. But anyway, he does have a lot of good momentum mons on his team, along with a lot of good breakers and setup sweepers, for example, like the Reuniclus. Tyranitar is a pretty good setup sweeper as well. I think my draft as a whole has a lot of strong, super effective options to check a Tyranitar, so I still think he could probably bring it though, because I do have 2 Psychic types that are relatively likely to come in my Mew and my Meloetta, so I think Tyranitar is definitely a possible bring this time around, a lot more likely than it was in our first matchup for sure. So T-Tar's kind of a threatening potential setup threat as well, and the Reuniclus too. I know Aster loves Reuniclus. He's brought it almost every single week this season, if I recall correctly, so I would not at all be surprised to see that come. He brought a really cool Reuniclus set in our first matchup. It was like a Psych Up, specially defensive set to help take on my Calm Minesweepers, so that was pretty cool. It fortunately didn't really do a whole lot in that particular game, but it was still a really cool bring on his part. So we could bring something similar to that this time around. I think he'll try to mix it up a little bit just to try to throw me off. He's done a pretty good job in our most recent 3 matchups where we've played each other, of bringing a team that I really didn't expect. And I think that's a large reason why we've actually lost our past 3 games to Aster. I've kind of let him dictate the flow of the match based upon his prep. And that's something that I'm going to really try to reverse here in this game. And you'll see whenever we get into the team, this team is pretty aggressive. This team is meant to put me in the winning position instead of trying to just prevent him from getting into a winning position. So I'm basically taking more of the sticks approach to team building in this particular game, as opposed to my typical style of kind of grind it out and wait for a win con to arise. So anyway, that's going to be the general game plan going into this game, is to basically set up these offensive win conditions that I've constructed for this team as best as possible, kind of break down the opposing checks to those Pokemon along the way throughout the battle. So anyway, yep, he just has a lot of threats on his team. I think the most likely mons to come are going to be the Lunala, the Rotom Wash. Definitely Scarf Rotom Wash put in a lot of work against my team, and I think it's something that is needed to help him check stuff like my Mega Aerodactyl and, more importantly, my Manaphy, as Tailglow Manaphy can do a ton of work to his team. I think Nidoqueen should come. I think Nidoqueen is his best response to the Magearna. I don't think it necessarily will come, as he actually opted not to bring it last time around, but I think Nidoqueen is the only real safe response to Magearna. So if he doesn't bring that, that could really open things up for Magearna here in this game. But I think it probably comes here. I think the Cobalion probably comes again, and then it's kind of a toss-up for me between stuff like the Salamence and the Tyranitar and the Mega Mawile. Stuff like that I think could all possibly come in this game. We'll just have to kind of see what he decides to do. I think there's about 8 mons that are pretty viable here in this matchup, and I think the team that I've constructed is going to be pretty good at dealing with pretty much any of those. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump on over to the team that we are bringing for round 1 of the Season 9 playoffs. Kicking this off with my primary win condition in this game, that is the Groudon. This was a set that I really wanted to bring in our first matchup, but I resisted. I held it back because this is so good against his team that I don't want to blow this in the regular season. This is an Expert Belt, Rock Polish, Solar Beam, Precipice Blade, Stone Edge Groudon. This absolutely nukes his team. If I can hit my moves, knock on wood, please knock on wood for me. If I can hit my moves, this thing absolutely obliterates his entire team. He already doesn't switch in well to the combination of Precipice Blades plus Stone Edge. His only real switch-ins to this are stuff like the Lunala, which he did show that he was willing to switch into Groudon last game, and the Rotom Wash. Solar Beam obviously is going to hit the Rotom Wash really hard, especially with the Expert Belt. It does a ton of damage. If he's more of an offensive Rotom, all I really need is 1 or 2 switch-ins to Rocks, and it'll just knock it straight out. If he is in max HP, variant of Rotom, I'll need a little bit of chip damage on it on top of that, but even so, he's not going to be able to knock me out in one hit with Hydro Pump, especially because Drought is going to set up the Sun for me and reduce that damage. So this is a very solid win condition against this team. Essentially, all I really need to do for this to be able to straight win, aside from hit my moves, is to get a little bit of chip on Rotom and have rocks up to keep Lunala outside of its Shadow Shield. If I am able to accomplish that in this game, this should certainly be able to win this game, especially if I can get up the Rock Polish on something that isn't able to do a lot of damage to me at the time. So yeah, just a phenomenal win condition against this entire team. Bulk investments here to kind of help me set up on the Nidoqueen if I need to. I can envision a late game scenario where he tries to preserve the Nidoqueen for the Magearna, so I might need to try to set up on the Nidoqueen with my Groudon. This investment does allow me to do that. And yeah, so that's what the bulk is for. Otherwise, just, you know, as much power as possible to nuke his team as hard as I can here in this game. So that's the primary win condition. Groudon finished, I think, number 3 in the MVP race for the GBA this season. So it's really done a nice job for me, picking up a bunch of kills throughout my games, and hopefully this will be another one of those games where we can claim several kills here against Aster. So next up is my secondary win condition, which is also a set that I intentionally did not bring against Aster in the first matchup, and that is this Shift Gear Magearna. Shift Gear Magearna is super good against his team for several reasons. One being the fact that it's really bulky. It can be really bulky, and you can see this is a really strange set. Okay, I am a relaxed nature, dropping my speed, and then I turn around and invest 132 EVs in the speed. Bear with me on that. The reasoning behind that is because that was I guess the optimal nature for accomplishing exactly what I needed to accomplish with this set. So I needed to be able to outspeed a Tornadus T that's creeping max speed Scolipede after a Shift Gear, which means I needed to hit 91 as my speed stat. But instead of dropping one of my defenses to accomplish that, I wanted to drop my speed stat and then invest in speed just so I don't leave myself more vulnerable to his offensive threats. Just because Magearna is one of my best defensive responses to a large chunk of his team, and I really wanted to bring Iron Head in conjunction with Shift Gear on this set to help me combat stuff like a Calm Mind Reuniclus. This will help a lot against Calm Mind, even that crazy Psych Up Reuniclus that he brought in our first matchup. This will help a lot against that type of set, because Reuniclus can't really beat this 1v1 unless he hits a bunch of Focus Blast in a row and like crits them, gets Spadef drop, stuff like that. He really doesn't have many options on Reuniclus specifically to be able to beat this 1v1, so this will be able to set up on the Reuniclus, and I also have that nice flinch chance with the Iron Head if I really need it against the Nidoqueen, which again, like I said, should probably be his switch into the Magearna, and it probably should be more specially defensive to help him take stuff like an Ice Beam, which I revealed in the previous game as one of my ways to hit the Nidoqueen with the Magearna. So I think Iron Head plus Shift Gear can really come in clutch. Shadow Ball and the Dazzling Gleam are both just solid coverage options against his team. This whole set of coverage moves is unresisted on his team. There's nothing that can switch into this freely, and again, setting up on Reuniclus is relatively free. It's even relatively free to set up on stuff like the Cobalion if I want to, because I am so defensive invested. I can take those hits pretty well. I can even set up on the Salamence if I need to, and if he brings that modest Heat Wave set like last time, I still will only take about half from that, and I should be able to get up the Shift Gear and start doing some damage from there against his team. So just a really solid mon against him. The only reason why it's not the primary win condition is because Nidoqueen is a very good stop to Magearna always, and that's why I think he needs to bring it. The good news, I guess, is if he does stop me with the Nidoqueen and he knocks me out, then my Groudon is able to set up on the Nidoqueen immediately and hopefully win the game at that point, as he really doesn't have very many priority options on his team. I think his only priority options, I might be wrong, but off the top of my head, I think his only priority options are the Sucker Punch on the Nidoqueen and Sucker Punch on the Mega Mawile. Lunala might get Shadow Sneak, I'm not 100% sure on that, but he's not bringing Shadow Sneak Lunala. That'd be crazy. Aster is pretty crazy, but I don't think he's quite that crazy when it comes to his Lunala sets. So yeah, these speed control related win conditions I think can be really effective here in this game, and honestly I'm really happy that I held on to these here to reveal them in the playoffs. But anyway, so those are my primary and secondary win cons. Now we're going to move on over to my Meloetta. So this is a very interesting set as well. This is a set that's designed to throw a wrench in his game game plan on turn 1. No one expects to get burned by a Meloetta. Nobody. And as a result of that, I think he's going to make a switch into something like his Cobalion, or more likely into his Mega Mawile, or maybe even his... what was the other one? I guess maybe the Torn or the Rotom, something like that. None of those Pokemon really appreciate getting burned by anything. They don't appreciate a burn, especially the Mega Mawile, and I really think Mega Mawile might just be his best switch into this, if not the Cobalion, as I think Cobalion's going to probably be more of a utility role in this game, just because he brought a setup win condition last time, and people kind of have this scouting report on me that I'm always going to be over-prepared for like the exact same sets that were brought against me in the first matchup. So I don't think he's going to try to bring the exact same set just for that reason, and even if he does, I'm ready for it. But I think it's more likely to be like a Shookenberry or Magnet Rise Stealth Rock Cobalion in this particular game, as he did mention in his commentary that Mega Mawile might not be the best rocker against my team, or just might not be the best Pokemon against my team. He might not actually bring Mega Mawile. That'll be pretty interesting to see here whenever the game actually happens. But anyway, this is a Flame Orb set designed to get a burn on turn 1. There are very few Pokemon that will force me out on turn 1. I guess T-Tar was the other one I was thinking of, that this was be a good way to get a burn on it. But there are very few Pokemon that can force me out on turn 1. The only one is really Torn T, as he could easily just knock me off and I'll accomplish nothing on that turn. But if he doesn't lead with Torn T, I'm probably just going to click Fling and see what I can catch with the burn. And basically the idea behind that then is to just throw off his game plan a little bit. I'm already planning to try to control the flow of the game with my 2 win conditions in the back and the way my pivots work around my team. Flame Orb is a great way to kind of throw him off of his plan and kind of make him dance around a little bit, trying to get his footing in the game so that I can have that opportunity to kind of sneak in there and seize momentum for the game, as I've really not had momentum in any of my games against Aster so far. So really trying to change that up here in this game with a bit of a cheeky lead in this Meloetta. But this is also going to be a nice response to the Lunala, as I do resist its dual stabs, that's very nice. I have something that resists its dual stab and is not weak to Stealth Rock like the Incineroar last time around. So this will be really nice for that role. Combination Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Psyshock hits his entire team at least neutrally, in many cases super effectively as well. So just a really strong Pokemon against this team, a decent amount of bulk on this set as well, just to take a variety of hits from his team. But yeah, overall just meant to kind of surprise him early on in the game and then give me a nice way to do some good damage against his team anytime that I can get in against the Lunala or against one of his other more passive threats. This still does a lot of damage with the modest nature. Even without much special attack investment, it's still a really solid offensive option against his team. So that is the Meloetta, my dedicated lead in this matchup. The next up is the Mega Aerodactyl. My Mega Aerodactyl is not going to be a Stealth Rocker this week. I actually brought Stealth Rocks on Mega Aerodactyl last time around. I don't think I ever revealed that in the team builder intentionally, but even so, I'm not going to bring rocks on Mega Aerodactyl. I'm going to bring rocks on the Mew. I'll show you that here in just a second. But this is basically meant to help me Pursuit Trap the Lunala. Lunala is going to be a Pokemon that is obviously of utmost importance to get rid of in this game, as it's the single Pokemon on his team that is able to do the most damage to my team in the least amount of time, aside from maybe the Mega Mawile under Trick Room, which is obviously very annoying as well. But even so, excuse me, having the pursuit option on this is really nice for getting rid of the Lunala in the case where it knocks out a Pokemon, as I don't expect it to have a Colbur Berry. I think it's much more likely to either be choiced again or to have something like Cassie Berry or Leftovers, as I did reveal to have multiple Shadow Ball users in the previous matchup, so I think Cassie Berry is relatively likely. That's the Ghost Resist Berry for those who don't know. But Leftovers is also relatively possible as well to help him recover health after taking Stealth Rock damage in this game. But anyway, I'm running the Fire Fang as well instead of Earthquake, which might seem kind of weird considering his team, but like I mentioned before, I am expecting the Cobalion or maybe even the Nidoqueen to be a Shookenberry in this matchup, or even the T-Tar potentially. I just think there's a very high probability of him having something like a Shookenberry on one of his Mons that would otherwise be hit super effectively by Earthquake in this particular game, so I wanted to run Fire Fang to hit his steel types more safely, and this also ensures that I can guaranteed put the Cobalion into range of my Groudon's Precipice Blades, even if he does have the Sugar Berry. So the Fire Fang will accomplish that, and Stone Edge is just a really good coverage option against his entire team. Hits everything super hard, and again, the stuff that can resist it is hit super effectively by Fire Fang in most cases, or just doesn't appreciate Fire Fang from a Tough Claws boosted Mega Aerodactyl. So that is the Mega Aero, very bulky set this week with Roost. This is meant to be a switch into Torn T. It's meant to be a pivot into Salamence as well, as a +1 Salamence can't knock out this set unless he's running Iron Tail or has an Expert Belt or a Life Orb. So this will be able to switch into Salamence if he's a Dragon Dance set, and otherwise just serve as a good way to force out something like the Salamence and force out the Torn T, force out the Lunala, Pursuit Trap the Lunala, and etc. It just does a lot of really nice things for my team. It also is going to help me hopefully chip down the Rotom Wash, which is again something that I need to have chip damage on for my Groudon to be able to win later on in the game. So that is the Mega Aerodactyl. I believe it's just outspeeding his Torn T. I might want to verify that because I don't actually remember 100%. Let's see. Oh, that's a regular Aerodactyl. That's why it looks like it's lower speed set. It definitely outspeeds the Torn T for the set there. So that's the Mega Aerodactyl. The next up is the Mew. This is a Mew that is meant to stick around for a long time in this game and just give him a really hard time. Max defense Mew, super good against him. In the previous matchup, I went with more of a physically defensive Groudon as my response to his physically offensive threats. I wanted to use Groudon as more of a win condition and offensive win condition in this game, so I went with more of a defensive Mew. It should be able to help me take on stuff like the Cobalion, the Tyranitar, even the Salamence to an extent, as I do have the Scald and the Toxic. Either of those statuses, the burn possibility from Scald or the Toxic damage would be nice against something like the Salamence and the T-Tar. All these things that might want to deal with the Mew. Even the Cobalion, Scald is really good against Cobalion 30% of the time. And yeah, so it's just a really annoying Pokemon against him. I have speed for max speed Tyranitar just in case, and Stealth Rocks are of utmost importance in this game because of Shadow Shield from the Lunala. I need to have that thing broken, so it's not going to be an easy stop to my offensive win conditions later on in the game. And if he makes it a priority to defog against my team with something like the Torn or the Salamence or whatever his defogger might be, maybe the Rotom, I have a lot of good ways to offensively respond to decisions like that. Most notably Pursuit at Mega Aerodactyl. I have ways to set up on those threats. Magearna setting up on Salamence, and etc. So a lot of ways to be able to deal with those types of mons. And yeah, this is just a really annoying Pokemon against this team. He's going to be able to wall a lot of stuff on his team. And yeah, so that's the Mew. And then finally we have a kind of bulky pivot in this game, the Goodra. Mainly just bringing this so that I have something that can pivot into Rotom Wash a little bit more than anything else on my team really can. Like, I could have brought something like Breloom. He prepped so hard for Breloom in the first matchup. I don't know. Like, Breloom is really good against this team. I think he's still going to prep for it pretty hard. I don't really want to take the risk of him bringing a team again that's so good against Breloom, especially when Breloom hasn't really fit my build super well throughout the rest of the season so far. I haven't brought Breloom yet in any of my teams, as you probably noticed, so I'm going to go with Goodra this time around. I think it's a little bit better in this particular role because Goodra's hard for him to knock out in one hit. And if he decides to bring a similar Salamence set like he brought the first time around, where he only had fire coverage and didn't bring dragon coverage, as outside of Goodra, dragon coverage isn't actually that great against my team, then this could actually be a bit of a nuisance for him. Plus the gooey ability is really nice for stuff like the Cobalion, the Salamence. Being able to reduce their speed stat just by them making physical contact is super good in terms of momentum in this game, I feel. So yeah, the ability is really nice. The Dragon Tail is there just to help out against the Reuniclus as a setup. Reuniclus is kind of annoying if my Magearna gets weakened, or for some reason the Magearna is not able to actually deal with Reuniclus as well as I'm anticipating, then Dragon Tail on this can help keep that in check. Flamethrowers, obviously, for his 3 steel types, among other things on his team. The superpower is for the Tyrantars. I do have enough speed investment for that, and I believe for the Nidoqueen as well. So this will kind of help me pivot into a Nidoqueen as well when that tries to check different members of my team. It can also pivot into the Lunala potentially, just depending on how the game plays out. But then Dragon Breath is the final move of choice on this set, which is mainly just there to get that clean paralysis on the Reuniclus, as I don't think he's going to bother with Overcoat this time around. He's almost definitely going to be Magic Guard if he brings it, and this just gives me a way to not have an empty turn against a potential Reuniclus switch in, which I think is overall his best switch into the Goodra. So if I can get a paralysis with the Dragon Breath, that'd be kind of nice in a potential war between the Magearna and the Reuniclus. So investment on this set looks pretty straightforward because it is pretty straightforward. Just wanted to be kind of fast with some bulk and be able to do a decent amount of damage against all of his team. This isn't really meant to break him, it's just meant to be a pivot. It's meant to help phase out the Reuniclus or other setup threats with Dragon Tail and potentially get a paralysis or two with the Dragon Breath. So that is the team for round 1 of the playoffs. This felt like kind of a long team builder. I haven't checked the time on it. I'm going to check real quick. Yeah, this was a little bit longer than usual, but it's a playoff team builder, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Tried to go into a little bit more depth because now I have absolutely no reason to hold anything back in this game against Aster. There's no way we'll play him again this season, so yeah, that's the thought process behind the team. We're going to try to win this with Groudon or Magearna and see if we can take us into the semifinals of the GBA in Season 9. So let me know what you think about the team in the comments below. Again, make sure to go check out Aster if you haven't already. Really solid player, solid content creator. Hope he uploads a team builder. I know he typically uploads his team builder and battle in the same video, so just make sure to go check that out whenever that comes up. Probably tomorrow, I would imagine, is when our battles will go up. So be on the lookout for those. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all in the battle coming out probably tomorrow. Peace.